Hi, this is Annie Lepton of Boho Chic Fiber Co. Today I'm going to demonstrate for you how to work a 3-needle bind off. A 3-needle bind off is used to make a shoulder seam in sweaters very often. I'll move these out of my way so I can show you. One example that I used them is in my Rippling Sand sweater pattern. You can see the shoulder here. It's kind of like, has the same look as an exposed seam. And they're really easy to do. Another sweater that I used it in is my Sea Glass and Driftwood sweater. And that's a color work one, and you can see I did it here. On the shoulder seam, you can see it looks like a little exposed seam right here. Now this is a really nice kind of seam to use when you're doing something like color work, where you don't want to interrupt the way that the colors are going to join when you seam. If you're seaming it like a typical way from the inside, like this, it may interrupt your pattern a little bit if you're seaming it that way. Whereas if you're using a 3-needle bind off, it makes for a much nicer, cleaner finish. And other complicated patterns like this Rippling Sands pattern, I used Bavarian twisted stitches, and the stitches should line up when you go to seam it. But again, if you were seaming it, like the mattress stitch or something, or just another kind of seaming stitch, and you're doing it like this, you wouldn't necessarily see it well enough to have everything line up appropriately. So I think that this is a really fun way to make a complicated seaming just a little bit more seamless. So what you're going to use for this kind of bind off is you're going to have your 2 pieces of knit fabric, which are typically like shoulder seams. I have just done little swatches here. And then you need a 3rd needle because it's called a 3-needle bind off. And what you're going to be doing is seaming them together just by binding off the stitches. So here I have, if you can see, I have the Bavarian twisted stitches that I used in my Rippling Sand sweater. You could do this with anything, with a regular knit stitch, with regular stockinette fabric, anything. But I'm just demonstrating on this because this is what I have ready. So what you're going to be doing is you want the wrong sides of your work to face each other. So there's the wrong sides. The right sides are going to be on the outside. When you're doing this, you're going to be having your sweater like laying flat with the right side facing you and the 2 shoulder seams lined up. So I have just a length of yarn right here. And you're going to take your 3rd needle, and all you're going to be doing is, I'll show you from the top, you're going to be knitting these first 2 stitches together and binding off. So we're going to insert our right hand needle into the 1st stitch knitwise, and then again into the 2nd stitch knitwise. We're going to bring our yarn over and run it through both of those stitches, dropping them off, just like we were knitting, but knitting with 2 stitches instead of 1. So now that's on our right hand needle. We're going to go ahead and do that with the 2nd one as well. We're going to knit into the front of both of those stitches, pull our yarn through, and pull both those stitches off. So now we have 2 stitches on our right hand needle, and just like with a typical bind off, you're going to want to take that 2nd stitch with your finger and pull it over the 1st stitch. So there we've bound off 1 stitch. So again, we're going to knit into the front of both of these stitches, taking them off our needle. So we're knitting them together, and then we're taking this stitch and pulling it over to bind it off. So I'll just show you that all the way across the row now. Knit them together, pull that stitch off. So you can see it's a really quick way to do a seam. It creates a pretty strong seam. If you don't like the exposed look, I suppose you could do it with the wrong sides facing and have it on the inside of your sweater. I haven't tried that yet, but I think it would work the same way. That way your seam would be on the inside, but I typically use other seaming methods for my shoulders, but when, like I mentioned before, like When it's a more complicated pattern, then I will go with something like this to kind of disguise the stitches a little bit, so I don't mind the seam being exposed usually. So I'm almost to the end here. We're just working all the way across. All right, there's our last stitch. Pull that over, and then pull that strand through the end. So that's it. So this is what your seam will look like from the front. This is what it looks like from the top. See how those stitches lined up really neatly? If you're doing a complicated pattern, it's great for that. And from the back. So the thing to take note of when doing this is, as you can see from the front, it's going to look like a knitwise bind off. From the back, it's going to look purlwise. So if you want your sweater to look really neat and have the same look on the front, I would suggest going the same direction each time. So I'll show you, for example, on this one here, I wanted to have that knit side on the front of my work, and I had it on this side too. So when you're going to seam, you want to always start from the left to the right if you're doing the knit stitch here on the front. So we're going to be working from the outside of the sweater into the center on this side. On the other side, if you want it to have the same knit stitch in the front, you're going to again work from this way to this way, but so it'll be from the neckline out to the sleeve. If you do this side this way, and then on the other side you were to do it like on the wrong side way, this way, then you would have the knit edge here and the purl edge here, and on this side you'd have the knit edge. So if you like things to look neat and tidy, I would always make sure you do it the right direction so that you get your knit edge on the front, and then on the back you have like the purl edge. And again, that's what the seam will look like. So thank you for watching this tutorial for how to do a 3-needle bind off. I hope it was helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to leave me a comment below. And as always, you're welcome to subscribe to the YouTube channel to see more of my videos. Most of my technique videos are specific to my patterns, but if you have a request for a specific technique, you can leave that below and I will try to get to it in the future. Thanks. Bye.